Thank you for stopping by to learn about the REiNS International Collaboration. What does REiNS stand for? Yeah, no, but nice try. REiNS stands for Response Evaluation in Neurofibromatosis and Schwannomatosis. Unfortunately, that's about all I know. Let's listen and learn from others.
Hi, my name's Scott Plotkin, and I'm a neuro-oncologist at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. Thank you for listening to this presentation about REiNS, and I hope that we can interest you in joining our program. As you can see from this introductory slide about REiNS, we were established in 2011 by a team of investigators, and since that time, our numbers have greatly increased. We are an international collaboration dedicated to developing standardized response criteria for clinical trials of patients with NF1, NF2, and schwannomatosis. We understand that collaboration across institutions and medical specialties is critical, particularly when it comes to linking experts in NF and other areas, including patient representation. We think it is important to have discussions about endpoints with stakeholders across the entire spectrum, and I'll be talking about that in a moment. We understand that these response criteria that we develop are a work in progress, meaning that we anticipate revising them in the years to come to improve them and make them more effective. And we believe that these criteria are going to help us to identify active medications more quickly and therefore bring helpful treatments to patients sooner. As I mentioned, one of our key and core beliefs is engaging stakeholders, and this includes a wide range of groups, including investigators, patient representatives, neurofibromatosis foundations, the Food and Drug Administration, the Cancer Therapy Evaluation Program at the National Cancer Institute, the NIH, the Department of Defense, and our pharmaceutical partners who are helping us to develop new medications. It's important that all these voices are involved in REiNS to develop the best treatment, the best response criteria. This is an overview of the REiNS collaboration and how we're organized. As you can see here, we have more than 160 active members spread across all continents. And to make things efficient, we've divided our work into 8 groups, as you can see here. We have groups focused on tumor imaging, functional outcomes, patient-reported outcomes, visual outcomes, disease biomarkers, neurocognitive outcomes, cutaneous neurofibromas, and patient representation. Behind those groups are the names of the professional group leaders that are helping coordinate our meetings. Importantly, our group is open to all participants, and we hope that you and others will be interested in helping out. So how does REiNS work? I already mentioned that we have these working groups. Ideally, these groups are meeting monthly by teleconference to develop recommendations on necessary endpoints. Periodically, the entire REiNS collaboration gets together. Typically, this happens once in the summer and once in the winter. I usually have this in person, although during the COVID-19 pandemic, this has been not possible. And the goal of these biannual meetings is to review the recommendations of the working group. And then every few years, we take these recommendations that have been vetted and approved and try to publish them for public use as a supplement in the journal Neurology. And we very much appreciate our collaborators in this process, including the Children's Tumor Foundation and other foundations, the FDA, CTEP, and the NIH. So how is REiNS supported? Importantly, we're supported through volunteerism of hundreds of investigators and patient representatives. We've been fortunate over the years to have grant support through the National Cancer Institute and through the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences at the NIH, and of course financial support from the Children's Tumor Foundation, NF Midwest, Texas NF, NF Northeast, and Mass General Hospital. And with that, I'll conclude, and I hope to see you at an upcoming REiNS meeting. Thank you.
My son was diagnosed with NF2 25 years ago. It has been a long, hard, often petrifying road. As with many NF2ers, especially those in their 30s, like him, he has had many brain surgeries to remove tumors, usually leaving him with yet another deficit. At the genesis of the REiNS Collaboration, it was recognized that endpoints in cancer and solitary brain tumor treatments were not necessarily relevant to NF patients, who present a far more complex challenge. Since then, I've had the honor and the privilege to work with various groups of these dedicated scientists and doctors on questionnaires and ultimately the papers published in medical journals. No, I do not have any medical training, but my marketing and editing background have aided in reviewing these papers, and my son's NF2 experience has often been reflected as well. From the start, I participated as a patient family representative, living these unique challenges and concerns. I was able to point out the key challenges confronting NF2 patients and help determine if a particular existing questionnaire was relevant or what was missing. I've also worked with another communications group to review questionnaires on hearing, tinnitus, and the specific additional communication challenges of NF2, which are especially important now as we investigate new potential treatments and need to ascertain their benefits and if they are indeed beneficial to the NF2 patient's unique needs. For instance, a deaf person with NF2 deals with many more issues than just, quote, only hearing issues. This is often compounded by other deficits, such as facial paralysis and vocal cord issues that compromise speech, or other brain and spinal tumors that impact on their daily lives at the same time in other equally challenging ways. Often these are not reflected in the questionnaires we reviewed. While I was at first intimidated and shy about contributing any insights to this group of brilliant REiNS participants, they have shown the utmost respect and appreciation for my feedback, making me very comfortable expressing these thoughts or concerns and ultimately reflecting them in their own assessments. As we embark on treatments or other forms of support to the NF community, it is important not to be ivory tower or irrelevant to these challenges and needs. Otherwise, we will never get a good handle on the success or failure of these treatments. REiNS is successful not only because of the incredible dedicated participants, but because the patients and their advocates have contributed important information to make these efforts relevant and ultimately to deliver the best clinical trials for these rare diseases. Please consider signing up to offer your unique and important observations to make this work even better as we venture forward. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Vanessa Merker, an NF researcher at Massachusetts General Hospital and the co-chair of the REiNS Patient Representative Program. When REiNS began in 2011, it was mostly comprised of healthcare providers and researchers. However, early on, REiNS leadership identified that we needed more patient and advocates engaged in our work to truly be successful in improving NF clinical trials. In 2017, we recruited our first cohort of REiNS patient representatives. At REiNS, we use the term patient representative to refer to people living with NF1, NF2, or schwannomatosis, or their family members and other loved ones who advocate on their behalf. The REiNS patient representatives work side by side with clinicians and researchers to help make NF clinical trials more patient-centered. When I say patient-centered, what I really mean is that we are trying to bring together the best research evidence with clinical expertise and the lived experiences of our patients to decide on the optimal therapeutic outcomes for our NF. We want to design clinical trials that will assess the benefit and harms of new therapies in a way that really informs decision-making in the clinic. We want to highlight comparisons and outcomes that truly matter to people, things like their day-to-day functioning and their quality of life, and we want to consider each individual's preferences and needs. We also want to make sure our clinical trials include a diverse array of people and places to make sure that the evidence we generate applies to everyone. Patient representatives in REiNS add value throughout the entire research cycle. They help us identify new domains and prioritize the research questions to match what patients really need us to answer. They help review and recommend clinical trial endpoints. That is, the benchmarks that we'll use to determine whether new treatments are effective or not in clinical trials. Patient representatives also help us figure out how to make it easier for other patients to participate in clinical trials and how we can explain our research studies better to participants. They also help us conduct studies that help support clinical trials. For example, by designing surveys that we give to other NF patients to ask about their preferences for clinical trials. Patient representatives might do things like help review the questions to make sure they make sense and that we're not missing any important aspects of NF. Patient representatives have also helped us analyze studies like this, coding the people's responses so that we understand what people are saying. Finally, patient representatives have helped share findings at scientific conferences, at lay events like the NF Forum, and in publications that we publish in the peer-reviewed literature. This slide here shows something from one of our recent publications in which researchers and patient representatives from REiNS came together to evaluate the patient representative program and come up with ideas for how to make it better in the future. We found that people across REiNS thought that patient representatives had a valuable and unique perspective on NF clinical trials that we needed to improve our work. Patients could share their personal experiences as well as those of the other patients and advocates that they've met to help inform our trials, not only to help perform the research tasks and analyze data, but to help clinicians and researchers understand patient concerns and see the bigger picture and work across disciplines. This leads to improved clinical trial outcome measures. So clinical trials that will be more relevant to patients' concerns, more feasible to implement, less burdensome on patients to do, and hopefully more meaningful as patients and their doctors decide on which therapies are the best treatments for them. If you become a REiNS patient representative, the main commitment is to join our monthly patient representative group meeting. This is a 1-hour virtual meeting, which you can join by phone or by video conference on your computer. And we always have CART live captioning for people who are hard of hearing. At these meetings, you would give feedback on clinical trial endpoints and clinical trial study designs. We also discuss the patient representative program, how it's run and how we can improve it in the future. And you'd be asked to give input on the overarching goals of REiNS and things like what topics we should cover in our upcoming meetings. You'd also be asked to attend the biannual REiNS conferences. These are 2 day-long meetings, one in the winter and one in the summer. At these conferences, we get updates from all the different REiNS working groups, and we'll discuss these updates, what's happening, and determine consensus recommendations for what NF clinical trials should do moving forward. These conferences always have both an in-person and a virtual option, although it's virtual only during the COVID pandemic. And CART is also provided during these meetings to ensure everyone can participate. There's also optional opportunities for people to become further engaged in REiNS if they are interested in certain topics or methods, in which case you would be assigned to additional REiNS patient working groups, which are based on topics such as cutaneous neurofibromas, patient surveys, imaging, and other groups like that, so that you can give input and work more directly on those projects. We hope that you consider applying to the REiNS Patient Representative Program if you are interested in this, especially because we are very committed to having a diverse class of patient representative. As you all know, NF touches people from all walks of life, and we're committed to supporting and increasing diversity in our membership and welcome applications from all people. We truly believe that having a diverse group of patient representatives enriches our work and maximizes the reach and value of the clinical trial recommendations that we make. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andres, and I have NF type 1. I have been a part of REiNS since 2017. I am so pleased as to how researchers, clinicians, physicians incorporate the voices of us patients into the research that's being done. Our voices are important, and by participating, we ensure that the best research is being put forward. I've been able to do things such as contribute to survey design, as well as writing some papers, doing some analysis. Any type of skills that our patients have are incorporated, but most important, our opinion and our voices are being heard. I urge you to join us. We want as many voices to join us to help move our research forward.
Hello, my name is Andrea Gross, and I'm a pediatric oncologist at the National Cancer Institute. I've been involved with the REiNS group for the past several years, and today I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the impact of REiNS on neurofibromatosis research. As you may already know, the mission statement of REiNS is to develop new standardized response criteria for determining treatment response in patients with neurofibromatosis type 1, neurofibromatosis type 2, and schwannomatosis. And this is particularly in the setting of clinical trials. So what is clinical research? Well, it's research involving humans that aims to answer one or more medical questions and to produce generalizable knowledge. The goal is to gain new knowledge and share what we find with patients and doctors around the world so that people can benefit. So what are endpoints? Well, trial endpoints are what is measured in a clinical trial to see what has or has not changed with treatment. For example, you could look at things like tumor size. How much has the tumor size changed? The amount of pain, the degree of hearing loss, or other measurements to see if a drug has made a difference. The REiNS group makes recommendations for endpoints that can be used for neurofibromatosis clinical trials. These endpoints have to have certain characteristics. First, they must be measurable. Second, they have to be practical because we want them to be used by clinicians all around the world. And third, and in my mind, most importantly, they have to be clinically meaningful. Now, as a researcher and a physician, I can guess what might be clinically meaningful to my patients or their families. But really, the only way to know what's clinically meaningful to people affected with a condition is to ask people with that condition, which is why we need you, patient representatives, to help us in this process. In 2013, the REiNS group published their first set of recommendations about clinical trial endpoints for neurofibromatosis studies. The first column here lists the various endpoints that were studied, including things like pain and hearing. And the second column shows the suggested endpoints that were recommended by the REiNS group. In 2016, published a second supplement looking at different endpoints with a whole additional set of recommendations. So why is this important? Well, one of the main goals of many clinical trials is to study a medication and to get it from the point of being in basic science, where it's being tested in animal models or cells, through to the point where it can be approved by a regulatory agency, such as the Food and Drug Administration in the US or the European Medicines Agency in the EU, so that it can become available for doctors to prescribe for patients around the world. Having standard endpoints and patient engagement in trial design makes applying for regulatory approval easier and much more likely to succeed. In the past several years, both the FDA, the EMA, and regulatory agencies across the world have made patient engagement in clinical trial design a priority and are looking for it when they are assessing any drug that is going through the approval process. So having patient representatives engaged in this process early on, like in the REiNS group, is really essential. One example of this is with the medication selumetinib, which is a MEK inhibitor or targeted therapy for patients with plexiform neurofibromas. At the NCI, we coordinated a multi-site trial for selumetinib for pediatric patients with neurofibromatosis type 1 and plexiform neurofibromas. The study began enrolling in 2015, and we incorporated the REiNS recommended endpoints where they were available. Shown here is a list of all of the clinical trial endpoints that were recommended by REiNS that were used in the SPRINT trial. One of the key ones here was the primary endpoint of tumor response. Using the recommended REiNS criteria to define a partial response of more than 20% shrinkage as a meaningful change was essential to the FDA submission. And having been part of that submission, I can tell you that REiNS was mentioned more than 100 times in the study report submitted to the FDA. And this led in April of 2020 to the FDA approving selumetinib for neurofibromatosis type 1 patients with symptomatic inoperable plexiform neurofibromas in children. This example just shows how crucial the work of REiNS is. And we would love to have you join us as we continue this work. There's a lot more to be studied and a lot more work to be done, and we would love to have your participation. Thank you.
My name is Dale Berg. I was diagnosed with schwannomatosis at age 45 after a misdiagnosis at age 35. I've been a participant in the REiNS organization for the past 4 years. My participation has been great. As a patient representative, I'm able to provide unique and thoughtful input to clinicians and researchers on topics that may not be discussed or discovered inside a research laboratory or during a doctor's appointment. Patient and caregivers help provide guidance on new and old issues and work in tandem together on a variety of topics. Another fantastic experience is developing friends outside my traditional boundaries. If you have the time and urge to provide your insight and work to end NF for future generations, please apply.
A huge thank you to all of our clinicians, researchers, and patient speakers. And thank you so much for viewing what we hope was a valuable introduction to patient advocacy and the REiNS Collaboration. We enjoyed putting this together for you and hope you feel inspired to share with us some more information about yourself so that we may follow up with you directly. We are excited to connect you with a current REiNS patient representative so you can learn more about what the role entails, and conversely, we can learn more about you and your unique NF experiences. On that note, REiNS will be hosting a live Q&A session, and we hope you will find the time to attend. That date is to be determined and will be coming soon to your inbox. If you cannot make it to the live event, a recording will be posted on the REiNS website. Please follow the link on your screen to a brief form where you may include your name, email address, and disease area of interest. In closing, when thinking about REiNS, the members of which are passionate, approachable, and inclusive, I am truly inspired. Working with REiNS is an opportunity for those who are interested in helping guide the science for the condition that impacts you or your loved one. The time and resources that are donated by all those who participate are overwhelmingly generous. Serving as a patient representative and participating in some of the working groups has given me some sense of control over a disease that so far has proven to be a bit of a roller coaster ride. When faced with the uncertainty of an NF diagnosis, turning to science has personally given me much hope. Your voice matters in this discussion, and you have the ability to help guide future clinical trials and eventually treatments, therapies, and cures for yourself and or your loved ones. I realize that pointing out the meaning of the REiNS acronym, at least for me, may seem somewhat obvious, but taking this patient engagement opportunity by the REiNS has the ability to not only empower you, but fundamentally change the landscape for future generations of NF patients. NF does not discriminate and touches people from all walks of life. REiNS is committed to supporting and increasing diversity in our membership and welcomes applications from people of all races, ethnicities, national origins, gender identities, sexual orientations, and disability status. We believe that all voices enrich our research, and that diversity maximizes the reach and value of our work. Lastly, don't forget to click the link in the slide to receive more information about this engagement opportunity with REiNS. Thank you very much.
Now you know a little bit more about REiNS. If you'd like to learn more about participating in the Patient Representative Program, please go to the URL listed on the screen. Thank you.